in the shadowy heart of Edinburgh's Gilded Library, where ancient manuscripts whisper secrets of gold and greed, legendary detective Hercule Poirot arrives to unravel a deadly puzzle. Summoned by Sir Archibald Drummond for a symposium on rare books, Poirot senses tension among the guests. Sharp-tongued scholar Dr. Eliza Thorne, pompous Professor Reginald Blackwood, glamorous widow Lady Victoria Hale, and nervous assistant Ian Fletcher. As rivalries simmer and forgeries surface, a midnight scream shatters the night. Blackwood lies murdered, stabbed with his own jeweled letter opener over the priceless Edinburgh Codex, a torn, illuminated leaf clutched in his hand. Poirot's little gray cells ignite, alibis crumble, hidden passages reveal paths to betrayal, and coded margins expose a forgery ring worth a fortune. Motives entwine, stolen glory, crushing debts, threatened inheritances, leading to a stormy confrontation where the killer's web unravels. In a twist of impulse and deceit, Lady Hale confesses. Her lover Blackwood's blackmail sealed his fate. Justice prevails, but the gilded halls hide eternal shadows. Dive into this Agatha Christie-inspired mystery. Will you spot the clues before Poirot? Chapter 1. The Invitation to the North. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels against the tracks had lulled Hercule Poirot into a state of contemplative repose, his gloved hands folded neatly over the silver head of his cane. The journey from London to Edinburgh had been long, but not without its compensations. The English countryside had given way to the rugged hills of the borders, and now, as the locomotive huffed into Waverley Station, the detective allowed himself a small sigh of satisfaction. Travel, he reflected, was a necessary evil for one who pursued the intricacies of human folly, yet it demanded a certain elegance in endurance. Stepping onto the platform, Poirot adjusted his immaculate overcoat against the sharp bite of the northern wind. It carried the faint tang of coal smoke and sea salt, a reminder that this ancient city, perched on its volcanic crags, was far removed from the orderly boulevards of his beloved Belgium. His mustache, waxed to perfection that morning, twitched slightly in the chill, but his cat-like green eyes remained alert, scanning the bustling crowd for his expected greeter. "Ah, Poirot, there you are, old fellow," boomed a familiar voice. Captain Arthur Hastings emerged from the throng, his face flushed with the cold, his tweed cap slightly askew. He clapped Poirot on the shoulder with the enthusiasm of an Englishman reuniting with a comrade. "Jolly good to see you. Sir Archibald's been pacing like a caged lion since I arrived yesterday. Says the whole affair's got him in a proper flap." Poirot inclined his head, a faint smile playing beneath his mustache. "Mon cher Hastings, it is always a pleasure to have you at my side. And what, precisely, is this flap of which you speak?" Sir Archibald's letter was most intriguing, but alas, somewhat vague. As they made their way through the station's arched halls, Hastings lowered his voice, though the din of porters and passengers provided ample cover. "It's the library, you see, the Gilded Library they call it. A splendid old pile in the old town, full of priceless books and manuscripts. Sir Archibald's the curator, mad about his collections. But lately there've been irregularities, books going missing, whispers of forgeries among the rare volumes. And now this symposium's brought in a pack of scholars, all eyeing each other like hawks." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. Ah, the world of the bibliophile, where knowledge is power, and power, it seems, invites mischief. "Lead on, Hastings." Hercule Poirot does not keep mysteries waiting. A short cab ride through the winding streets of Edinburgh brought them to the library's imposing facade. Built in the heyday of Victorian grandeur, it rose like a temple to learning, its stonework etched with intricate carvings of mythical beasts and scholarly saints. The entrance hall was a cavern of polished marble, leading to the main reading room, where sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating rows of oak shelves laden with leather-bound treasures. Gold leaf adorned the cornices, catching the light in a dazzling display that might have seemed ostentatious to some, but to Poirot it spoke of a passion for the exquisite. Sir Archibald Drummond awaited them there, a robust figure in his 60s, with a mane of white hair and a beard that gave him the air of a benevolent wizard. His eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of anxiety as he shook Poirot's hand. "Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you. I am eternally grateful you've come. This symposium was meant to celebrate our medieval manuscripts, but I fear darker forces are at play." "Précisez, if you please, Sir Archibald," Poirot replied, settling into a plush armchair by the fireplace. "What exactly troubles you?" The curator glanced about, ensuring they were alone amid the hushed whispers of turning pages. Anonymous letters, for one, demanding I part with certain items or face exposure of supposed scandals. And then the guests. They've brought their own rivalries. Allow me to introduce them properly over tea. As if on cue, the group assembled in the adjoining salon, a room of velvet drapes and crystal chandeliers. First came Dr. Eliza Thorne, a woman of striking intellect, her dark hair pinned severely, her gaze sharp as a quill point. She specialized in illuminated texts, and her handshake was firm, almost challenging. "Monsieur Poirot, I've heard of your methods, logical deduction applied to chaos, admirable in theory." Professor Reginald Blackwood followed, a tall, angular man with a perpetual scowl etched into his features. His expertise in historical forgeries made him a formidable presence, though his manner was brusque. "Drummond's fretting over nothing," he muttered, accepting a cup of tea with ill grace. "These academics squabble like children over toys." Lady Victoria Hale glided in next, a vision of elegance in a gown of deep burgundy, her pearls catching the afternoon light. A widow of considerable means, she sponsored the event with a generosity that masked, Poirot suspected, deeper motives. "Such a delight to meet you, monsieur," she purred, her smile practiced and poised. "Edinburgh's chill is nothing compared to the warmth of intellectual pursuit. Wouldn't you agree?" Last was Mr. Ian Fletcher, Sir Archibald's young assistant, a lanky fellow in his 20s with wire-rimmed spectacles and an air of perpetual distraction. He poured the tea with trembling hands, his eyes darting between the others as if anticipating a storm. Over scones and clotted cream, Poirot observed the interplay with the precision of a watchmaker. Dr. Thorne and Professor Blackwood exchanged barbed comments on a disputed manuscript, their words laced with veiled accusations. Lady Hale interjected smoothly, steering the conversation to safer waters, while Fletcher remained silent, his pallor suggesting unspoken worries. Sir Archibald attempted joviality, but his laughter rang hollow. "The human drama, it unfolds even in the quietest rooms," Poirot murmured to Hastings as the group dispersed. "Jealousy simmers, ambition lurks, and the library's secrets, they wait to be uncovered." As twilight descended, casting elongated shadows across the gilded shelves, Poirot retired to his guest quarters in Sir Archibald's nearby residence. Yet sleep eluded him. The wind howled through the narrow winds outside, carrying with it an omen of unrest. Little did he suspect that the night's peace would soon be shattered by a cry echoing from the heart of the library itself. Chapter 2. Shadows among the shelves. The first light of dawn filtered through the mullioned windows of the gilded library, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the lecture hall. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, had already partaken of a modest breakfast in Sir Archibald's residence, poached eggs and toast, prepared to his exact specifications, before making his way to the venue. The hall itself was a testament to scholarly splendor, tiered seating of dark mahogany, walls lined with portraits of eminent bibliophiles, and a dais adorned with a massive oak lectern that seemed to have been hewn from the forests of ancient Caledonia. A faint aroma of beeswax polish mingled with the musty perfume of old vellum, creating an atmosphere both inviting and subtly oppressive. By 9 o'clock, the symposium had commenced, drawing a select audience of local academics and enthusiasts, their faces alight with anticipation. Sir Archibald opened the proceedings with a gracious welcome, his voice booming with forced cheer. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather today to delve into the illuminated wonders of the medieval world. Our first speaker, Dr. Eliza Thorne, will enlighten us on the intricacies of a remarkable 14th century Book of Hours recently acquired for our collection. Dr. Thorne ascended the dais with the poise of a queen, her severe black dress accentuating her angular features. She adjusted her spectacles and began, her tone measured yet infused with passion. This manuscript, ladies and gentlemen, is no ordinary devotional text. Its miniatures depict scenes of courtly life with such vivid detail that one might almost hear the lute strings vibrating. But more crucially, it bears evidence of a sophisticated forgery network plaguing our field. The pigments, Prussian blue anachronistically employed, point to a forger of exceptional skill, one who has infiltrated the very sanctums of learning. A murmur rippled through the audience. Professor Reginald Blackwood, seated in the front row, shifted uncomfortably, his long fingers drumming on the armrest. When the floor opened for questions, he rose abruptly. Dr. Thorne, your assertions are as bold as they are baseless. Prussian blue, a mere contamination, perhaps, from later restorations. You inflate coincidences into conspiracies to bolster your own tenuous theories. Dr. Thorne's eyes flashed behind her lenses. Professor, your denial smacks of defensiveness. Have you not yourself authenticated pieces now suspected in this very scandal? The exchange grew heated, drawing sidelong glances from the others. Lady Victoria Hale, ensconced in a seat of honor, fanned herself with an ivory accessory, her lips curving in a subtle smile as she caught the eye of young Mr. Ian Fletcher across the aisle. Fletcher, notebook in hand, blushed faintly and looked away, busying himself with jotting marginalia. Poirot, positioned unobtrusively at the rear with Hastings, noted these silent communications with keen interest. "Observe, mon ami," he whispered. "The lady's gaze is not idle. It conveys volumes unspoken." Sir Archibald, sensing the mounting discord, interjected smoothly. "A spirited debate, to be sure. Let us adjourn briefly before our next presentation, and this afternoon I am pleased to announce a private viewing of the Edinburgh Codex, our library's pièce de résistance, a 12th century gospel illuminated with alchemical enigmas that have puzzled scholars for generations. The group dispersed for luncheon in the library's elegant dining annex, a room of crystal decanters and silver service, where a cold collation awaited, salmon from the Tweed, delicate quail eggs, and an array of cheeses that Poirot approved with a nod. Conversation flowed in fits and starts, the earlier tension simmering beneath polite inquiries. Dr. Thorne, seated beside Lady Hale, spoke animatedly of her travels to monastic archives in France, while the lady listened with apparent fascination, her gloved hand occasionally brushing the stem of her wine-glass. Professor Blackwood held court at the other end of the table, regaling a cluster of locals with tales of his exploits in dusty Cairo markets, where he claimed to have unearthed forgotten papyri. Authenticity, my dear sirs, is the bedrock of our profession. One must have an eye for the genuine amidst the chaff. Fletcher hovered at the periphery, refilling glasses with a deference that bordered on servility. Sir Archibald, ever the host, drew Poirot aside near the window overlooking the Royal Mile. These rivalries, Poirot, they run deep. Thorne and Blackwood were once collaborators, but a disputed credit soured their alliance. And Lady Hale, her generosity funds much of this, yet I wonder at her true interest in our dusty tomes. Poirot sipped his mineral water thoughtfully. Interest, Sir Archibald, often masks intent. The codex you mention, it is of immense value, non? Insured perhaps against loss or misfortune? The curator's brow furrowed. Indeed, for a king's ransom, but enough of shadows. Let us enjoy the repast. After luncheon, the party reconvened for the afternoon's tour of the restricted stacks, a labyrinth of narrow aisles beneath vaulted ceilings, where the air grew cooler and the scent of antiquity more pronounced. Iron gates clanged shut behind them as Fletcher led the way, lantern in hand despite the electric sconces flickering overhead. "These shelves house our most fragile holdings," he explained, his voice echoing softly. "Manuscripts from the scriptoria of Iona, incunabula from Gutenberg's contemporaries." Poirot trailed at the rear, his patent leather shoes silent on the stone floor. His sharp eyes darted about, cataloging details. A velvet rope slightly askew, a faint dusting of powder on a lower shelf. Then, in a dimly lit corner, he spotted a ladder propped against a high alcove, its rungs showing fresh scuffs. "This ladder, Monsieur Fletcher. It seems recently employed. For what purpose?" Fletcher paused, his Adam's apple bobbing. Merely routine maintenance, Monsieur Poirot. Dusting the upper reaches, you understand. These old volumes require constant vigilance." A smudge marred the gilt frame of a nearby display case, oily, as if from a hurried hand. Poirot made no comment, but filed it away in the orderly compartments of his mind. Dr. Thorne lingered over a chained volume, her fingers tracing the embossed cover with reverence, while Blackwood snorted dismissively at a faded rubric. Lady Hale, claiming the chill aggravated her nerves, excused herself midway through the tour, gliding away with a murmur of apology. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of amber and indigo, the group reassembled in the main reading room for an informal soiree. Fire crackled in the immense hearth, warding off the encroaching dusk. Sir Archibald poured sherry from a decanter, his hands steady despite the day's strains. "To knowledge," he toasted, "and the pursuit thereof." Conversation turned to the codex once more, with Thorne advocating for new spectroscopic analysis to decode its margins. Blackwood countered vehemently, his face reddening. Such meddling risks damage. Tradition suffices. Your modern gadgets are but crutches for the inept. The argument escalated, voices rising like a discordant symphony. Lady Hale had not rejoined them, sending word via a servant of a persistent headache that confined her to her chambers. Fletcher, positioned by the door, shifted uneasily, his eyes flicking to the clock as if awaiting some signal. It was then that Sir Archibald drew Poirot into a quiet alcove, away from the fray. "Those letters I mentioned, they've escalated. Demands to relinquish the codex or suffer revelations that could tarnish my name. Forgeries, scandals. I fear an insider's hand." Poirot's mustache quivered with suppressed excitement. "The web tightens, mon ami. Threads of motive weave through this gathering, envy in the professor's scorn, ambition in the doctor's zeal, perhaps even desperation in the assistant's gaze. And the lady's absence? Convenient or calculated?" Sir Archibald nodded gravely. "You've a knack for seeing the unseen, Poirot." As the evening wore on, the group thinned, retiring one by one to their quarters. Poirot and Hastings lingered, the detective's mind abuzz with the day's observations. Outside, the wind moaned through the ancient streets, rattling casements like impatient specters. Unseen by all, in the shadowed recesses of the rare books section, a chamber accessible only by a concealed door behind a tapestry, a solitary figure stirred. Gloved hands, steady and purposeful, extended toward a hidden drawer nestled within a pedestal. The latch clicked softly, the sound lost in the library's vast silence. What secrets lay within, and to what end? The figure paused, listening, then proceeded with the caution of one who treads the fine line between discovery and doom. The gilded halls, for all their splendor, harbored depths where light dared not venture, and in those depths, the first tendrils of tragedy began to uncoil. Chapter 3. The Fatal Discovery. The clock in the grand hall of Sir Archibald's residence struck midnight with a resonant chime that seemed to reverberate through the stone walls of Edinburgh's old town. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in his borrowed chamber, a room of heavy brocade curtains, and a four-poster bed that dwarfed his compact frame, had not yet sought repose. Instead, he sat at a small writing desk, his notebook open before him, meticulously jotting observations from the day's events. The wind outside had risen to a howl, whipping rain against the leaded panes, but Poirot's focus remained unbroken, his pen scratching steadily in the lamplight. Captain Hastings, in the adjoining room, had retired earlier, his snores faintly audible through the connecting door. The captain's constitution, robust as it was, succumbed readily to the demands of a full day, whereas Poirot's little gray cells thrived on the nocturnal hours, when distractions faded and patterns emerged like stars in a clearing sky. It was in this hush that the scream erupted, a piercing, anguished cry that cut through the storm's fury, like a blade through fog. Poirot froze, his head cocked, confirming the direction. It emanated from the direction of the Gilded library, mere steps across the cobbled courtyard. Without hesitation, he seized his cane and overcoat, flinging open the door to rouse Hastings. "Vite, mon ami, there is trouble, grave trouble." Hastings emerged bleary-eyed, tugging on his dressing gown. "Good Lord, Poirot, what was that?" "No time for speculation. To the library." They dashed through the rain-slicked yard, the downpour soaking them in seconds. The library's side entrance, reserved for Sir Archibald's private use, stood ajar, a detail Poirot noted with a frown. Inside, The air was still and heavy. The electric lights dimmed to a nocturnal glow. Following the echo of hurried footsteps ahead, Sir Archibald's no doubt, they navigated the corridors to the rare books alcove, a secluded nook at the library's heart, shielded by towering shelves and a velvet rope. The scene that greeted them was one of macabre stillness. Professor Reginald Blackwood lay sprawled across the reading desk, his body twisted in an unnatural pose, face down amid scattered parchments. From his back protruded the hilt of a jeweled letter opener, its blade buried deep between the shoulder blades. A pool of blood, dark and viscous, had seeped onto the open folios of the Edinburgh Codex, staining the intricate illuminations with a grotesque finality. The professor's right hand was clenched in a death grip around a fragment of vellum. A torn leaf depicted a coiled serpent amid faded script. Sir Archibald stood frozen nearby, his nightshirt disheveled, a lantern trembling in his grasp. "Poirot, Hastings. I heard the cry and came running. Reginald, he's dead." Poirot knelt swiftly, his movements precise despite the horror. He examined the wound without touching it, noting the clean entry, the absence of defensive marks on the victim's arms. Stabbed from behind, with force and accuracy, no sign of struggle. He was at ease, perhaps engrossed in study. His gaze shifted to the codex. And this? Tampered with? The pages are disarrayed. Hastings, ever the soldier, checked for a pulse, though the pallor of death was evident. Gone, poor blighter. Still warm, though? Not long ago. Footsteps echoed from the hall as the other guests arrived, summoned by the commotion. Dr. Eliza Thorne burst in first, her hair unbound, a shawl clutched about her shoulders. Her eyes widened at the sight. Professor Blackwood? Murdered? But who? How? Lady Victoria Hale followed, her composure remarkably intact, though her face was pale beneath its powder. She leaned against the doorframe, fanning herself weakly. "This is dreadful. I was awakened by the scream. Thought it a nightmare at first." Mr. Ian Fletcher stumbled in last, his spectacles askew, breathing heavily. "Sir Archibald, I came as soon as I heard. Is that blood on the codex?" "Sir." Archibald, regaining some authority, dispatched a servant to summon the authorities. Within the hour, Inspector Duncan MacLeod of the Edinburgh Constabulary arrived, a burly man with a ginger mustache and a brogue as thick as peat. Accompanied by a sergeant and a police surgeon, he surveyed the scene with professional detachment. "A locked room mystery, eh? The main doors were bolted from within, windows secured. Only key holders could access this wing after hours. Yourself, Sir Archibald, Mr. Fletcher as assistant, Dr. Thorne with her research privileges, and Lady Hale granted access for her patronage." Poirot, who had been quietly circling the alcove, interjected politely. "Inspector, if I may, Hercule Poirot, at your service. The method is intriguing. The weapon, this letter opener, ornate, likely from the desk set here, not carried in but seized in the moment." MacLeod grunted approval. "Aye, seems so. No fingerprints yet. We'll dust it. And the victim clutched that scrap. Mean anything?" Poirot examined the torn leaf under the lantern's beam. A serpent motif, symbolic of treachery in medieval iconography. But observe, the tear is fresh, the edges crisp, not from the codex itself. The binding shows no corresponding gap. Planted, perhaps, to mislead. Dr. Thorne stepped forward, her voice steady despite the shock. "That leaf, it's from a similar manuscript, one I've studied, but I was in my room, revising my notes. I swear it." Lady Hale nodded faintly. "As was I. A dreadful headache plagued me all evening. I took a draught of laudanum and retired early. My maid can confirm." Fletcher wrung his hands. "I heard a muffled noise around 11, thought it the storm, or perhaps the professor rummaging. He often worked late." Sir Archibald corroborated. "Reginald requested solitude in the alcove after dinner, said he had insights on the codex's margins. The police surgeon, after a cursory examination, pronounced death by stabbing, the blade piercing the heart. Instantaneous, or near enough. Time of death, between 11 and midnight. As the body was covered and preparations made to remove it, Inspector MacLeod sealed the alcove with tape. No one touches anything till forensics arrive at dawn. Statements tomorrow, all of you." Poirot lingered as the others dispersed, his eyes roving the scene once more. The hidden drawer in the desk pedestal, previously noted during the tour, now gaped slightly open, empty. "Hastings, mon ami, check the ladder from yesterday. Still in place?" Hastings obliged, finding it undisturbed. "Yes, but look here, a faint scuff on the floor, as if something heavy was dragged." Poirot nodded, his mind assembling fragments. The anonymous threats to Sir Archibald, the rivalries among the scholars, the codex's value, all converged in this bloody tableau. The killer is bold, striking under our noses, but boldness leaves traces. Outside, the storm abated, leaving a dripping silence. Back in his chamber, Poirot paced, Hastings watching with concern. Who benefits, Poirot? Blackwood was abrasive, but murder? Ah, benefits are many. Silencing a rival, claiming a discovery, perhaps even insurance. But the leaf, the serpent, a message or a feint. As the first gray light crept over the rooftops, illuminating the castle's silhouette against the sky, Poirot closed his notebook. The investigation had begun, and in the gilded library's shadows, the truth awaited his unraveling. Yet, even as he sought rest, a nagging detail persisted. Lady Hale's composure, too perfect amid chaos. Fletcher's tremor, too pronounced. Thorne's knowledge of the leaf, too intimate. And Sir Archibald, his grief seemed genuine, but secrets burdened even the most honorable men. The dawn brought no immediate revelations, only the promise of interrogations and the inexorable march toward exposure. In the quiet hours before the household stirred, Poirot's little gray cells whirred ceaselessly, piecing together the mosaic of motive and opportunity that would, in time, reveal the hand behind the fatal thrust. Chapter 4. Interrogations and Alibis. The morning after the tragedy dawned crisp and unforgiving over Edinburgh, the sun piercing the mist that clung to the castle's battlements like a reluctant shroud. In the gilded library's antechamber, a compact room of leather-bound ledgers and a sturdy oak table, repurposed as an interrogation desk, Inspector Duncan MacLeod had established his command post. The air carried a faint chill, amplified by the stone walls, and the scent of fresh coffee mingled uneasily with the lingering metallic tang from the previous night's horror. Uniformed constables stood sentinel at the doors, their expressions as impassive as the portraits gazing down from the paneling. Hercule Poirot arrived promptly at 9, his attire impeccable. A tailored suit of charcoal gray, his shoes gleaming, his mustache a masterpiece of symmetry. Captain Hastings trailed him, nursing a slight headache from the disrupted sleep, but eager to assist. "Dashed grim business, Poirot," he muttered as they entered. "MacLeod seems a solid sort, though. None of that bluster you get from some inspectors." Poirot nodded, his green eyes surveying the setup. "Solid, yes, but the solid rock yields secrets only to the patient chisel. We shall observe, mon ami, and perhaps guide the chisel's stroke." Inspector MacLeod, poring over preliminary notes, looked up with a nod. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, appreciate your presence. I've statements to take, and your insights might prove useful. We'll start with Dr. Thorne. She and the victim had history." A constable ushered in Dr. Eliza Thorne, who appeared composed but for the dark circles beneath her eyes, evidence of a sleepless night. She took the proffered seat, folding her hands in her lap with deliberate calm. MacLeod began methodically. "Dr. Thorne, describe your movements last evening." Her voice was steady, laced with a hint of academic precision. "After the soirée, I retired to my guest room in Sir Archibald's residence around 10. I spent an hour reviewing annotations on the Codex, fascinating marginalia that Blackwood dismissed out of hand. By 11, I extinguished my light and attempted sleep, though the storm kept me restless until the scream." MacLeod jotted notes. "And your relationship with Professor Blackwood?" Witnesses noted heated exchanges. A flicker of irritation crossed her features. "Professional rivals, Inspector. He undermined my work on forgeries, claiming my evidence circumstantial. We argued, yes, but murder? I am a scholar, not a savage." Poirot, seated in a corner armchair, interposed gently. "If I may, mademoiselle, the torn leaf in the professor's hand. You recognized it as from a manuscript you've studied. How so?" She met his gaze squarely. "The serpent illumination is distinctive, a motif from a 13th century bestiary in my possession, but anyone with access to the stacks could have obtained a similar fragment. I keep my materials locked." MacLeod pressed. "Alibi confirmation? Anyone see you?" "None, save perhaps the maid who brought tea earlier. I was alone." Dismissed for the moment, she departed with a nod, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Next entered Lady Victoria Hale, a vision of restrained mourning, in a high-necked blouse of dove gray, her pearls subdued in the morning light. She settled gracefully, accepting a cup of tea with murmured thanks. "Lady Hale," MacLeod began, "you mentioned a headache and laudanum. Elaborate." She sighed softly, her eyes downcast. "The day's debates fatigued me terribly. By 8, the pain was insistent. I took a dose from my vial, habitual for such ailments, and retired. Sleep came swiftly. The scream roused me, disoriented." "And your connection to the library? As patron you have a key." "Indeed, for convenience during events. But last night I had no cause to venture out. My investments are cultural, Inspector, not criminal." Poirot leaned forward. "The Codex, madame. It is insured, and you are a beneficiary, non?" Sir Archibald confided as much. Her composure held, though her fingers tightened on the teacup. "A family tie. I am his late wife's cousin. The policy protects the collection, nothing more. Reginald's death benefits no one." Hastings, scribbling discreetly, noted her steady gaze. Too steady, perhaps, for one so recently shocked. As she withdrew, Mr. Ian Fletcher was summoned. The young assistant appeared haggard, his collar askew, spectacles smudged. He perched on the chair's edge, fidgeting with a handkerchief. "Mr. Fletcher," MacLeod said, "you lingered in the library late. Why?" "Cataloging duties, sir. Sir Archibald tasked me with updating records on the symposium acquisitions. I worked in the main room until nearly midnight, then locked up and returned to my quarters." "Heard anything unusual?" "A thump, perhaps, around 11:30. attributed it to the wind or Blackwood shifting books. He was in the alcove. I didn't intrude. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The hidden drawer in the desk, was it secure when you left? Fletcher paled. I didn't check specifically. It's for minor artifacts, nothing vital. MacLeod noted the evasion. Debts, lad? We've word you're in financial straits. Gambling, perhaps? Fletcher's shoulders slumped. A youthful folly, Inspector. Loans from unsavory sorts, but I've arrangements to settle them. Nothing to do with this. Finally, Sir Archibald Drummond himself took the seat, his robust frame seeming diminished by grief. Ask away, MacLeod. I've nothing to hide. Your movements? Retired at 10:30, read briefly, then dozed. The scream woke me. I grabbed my robe and lantern, arriving first. The threats you mentioned to Poirot? Details? Anonymous notes slipped under my door. Demands to sell the codex or face ruin. Hints at forged provenances in my collection. I dismissed them as pranks until now. Poirot interjected. The letter opener, Sir Archibald, engraved with Blackwood's initials. From his personal set? Aye, a gift from a colleague, kept on the alcove desk. As questioning concluded, MacLeod conferred with his sergeant. Fingerprints and forensics pending. Poirot rose, pacing the room with measured steps. Inspector, permit me access to Blackwood's quarters. Clues may linger there. Granted permission, Poirot and Hastings proceeded to the professor's guest room, a Spartan space of stacked books and scattered papers. Amid the disarray, Poirot unearthed a crumpled note from beneath a blotter. The gilded truth lies in the margins. Meet at midnight. Signed with a flourish, E. E for Eliza? Hastings ventured. Possibly, mon ami, or a forgery to implicate her. Observe the ink, fresh, matching the codex annotations. Further search revealed a vial of Prussian blue pigment tucked in a drawer, alongside a ledger noting discrepancies in manuscript valuations. Blackwood was investigating forgeries, Poirot murmured. Perhaps he uncovered the threat's source. Returning to the antechamber, they found MacLeod examining the letter opener, now bagged as evidence. No prints but the victim's, wiped clean, likely. Poirot chuckled softly. Ah, but the absence speaks volumes. A glove, perhaps, and the angle of the wound requires the assailant of certain height. Hastings pondered. Thorne's tall enough, Fletcher too, Lady Hale's petite, but determined. As midday approached, the group lunched sparsely in the dining annex, the atmosphere thick with suspicion. Dr. Thorne avoided eye contact with Fletcher, who picked at his food. Lady Hale conversed lightly with Sir Archibald about inconsequential matters, her laughter a brittle note in the tension. Poirot, declining the meal in favor of a tisane, confided in Hastings. Alibis fragile as eggshells, motives abundant, Thorne's rivalry, Fletcher's debts, Hale's inheritance, even Drummond's threats. But the key, the planted leaf, the empty drawer. Someone orchestrates misdirection. Outside, the streets bustled with oblivious life, carts rumbling over cobbles, vendors hawking wares. Yet within the library's gilded confines, the net of inquiry tightened. MacLeod announced further forensics, footprints in the alcove dust, a strand of hair, dark like Thorne's or Hale's. By afternoon, Poirot requested a private word with each, probing inconsistencies. To Thorne, "Your bestiary. May I examine it?" She consented, revealing a missing leaf matching the torn fragment. "Stolen, I swear, from my room." To Fletcher, "Your loans. Who holds the notes?" He stammered a name, a shady Edinburgh lender linked to art dealings. To Lady Hale, your laudanum vial, empty or full? She produced it, half depleted, but Poirot noted the label's freshness. To Sir Archibald, the secret passage, does it exist? The curator blanched. An old servant's way, disused, but locked. As evening shadows lengthened, Poirot retreated to ponder, the pieces aligning in his methodical mind. The interrogations had peeled layers, exposing vulnerabilities, but the core of the puzzle remained veiled. In the quiet of his chamber, he twirled his mustache, envisioning the fatal moment. Blackwood bent over the codex, unsuspecting, as the shadow fell behind him. The rain returned, pattering insistently, a rhythmic underscore to the unfolding drama. Tomorrow would bring revelations, but for now, suspicion hung like the mist over the Forth, enveloping all in its chill embrace. Chapter 5. Clues in the Margins. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of the Gilded Library's archives, casting elongated patterns of light and shadow across the cluttered tables, where Hercule Poirot had commandeered a workspace. Piles of manuscripts surrounded him like ancient sentinels, their vellum surfaces whispering secrets of bygone eras. The room, tucked away in a quieter wing of the building, offered respite from the bustling interrogations elsewhere, allowing Poirot's little gray cells to operate undisturbed. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, sorting through a stack of documents with the diligence of a faithful retriever, while a constable stood guard at the door, his presence a nod to Inspector MacLeod's thoroughness. Poirot adjusted his pince-nez, peering through a magnifying glass at the Edinburgh Codex, which lay open under protective glass. The police had permitted limited access for his examination, recognizing the detective's expertise in matters of deception. "See here, Hastings," he said, his voice a murmur of concentration. "The margins of this page, they bear inscriptions not visible to the unaided eye. Faint lines, etched in an ink that fluoresces under certain lights. Not medieval, non. The composition is modern, perhaps ultraviolet reactive." Hastings leaned in, squinting. "By Jove, you're right. Symbols, aren't they? Circles, triangles, alchemical, like Sir Archibald mentioned. Précisément. But observe the irregularity. Some annotations overlay the original text, others are crammed into the borders as if added hastily. This codex has been altered, mon ami, a palimpsest of secrets upon secrets." Their scrutiny was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Eliza Thorne, whom Poirot had summoned for consultation. She entered with a brisk step, her expression a blend of curiosity and wariness. "Monsieur Poirot, you wish to see me? I trust this isn't another round of accusations." Poirot rose courteously, gesturing to a chair. "Au contraire, mademoiselle. Your knowledge of illuminations is invaluable. Tell me, these marginal notes, do they align with your research?" She examined the codex closely, her fingers hovering without touching. "Fascinating. The symbols suggest Hermetic traditions, Mercury for transformation, the Ouroboros for cycles. But you're correct, the ink is contemporary. Blackwood and I debated this very manuscript. He insisted the additions were authentic, part of a hidden code from the scriptorium. I argued they were forgeries, inserted to inflate value. And your collaboration with him, when did it sour?" A shadow crossed her face. "Years ago, on a similar project, he published my findings as his own, claiming sole credit. Since then, we've been at odds, but I harbored no lethal grudge." Poirot nodded sagely. "Yet the torn leaf from your bestiary, stolen, you say. When did you last see it intact?" Before the symposium, I noticed the gap yesterday morning, but thought it a misplacement amid the chaos. As she departed, Poirot turned to Hastings. She speaks truth, perhaps, but omits shades. Enlist your observational skills, mon ami. Shadow the suspects discreetly this afternoon. Report any anomalies. Hastings saluted with mock formality. Righto, Poirot. I'll be your eyes and ears. While Hastings ventured forth, Poirot delved deeper into the archives, requesting access to the library's ledger of acquisitions. The heavy tome revealed entries in Sir Archibald's hand, with notations on the codex's provenance, acquired from a private collector a decade prior, authenticated by Blackwood himself. Interesting, Poirot mused. The professor's involvement runs deep. A faint discrepancy caught his eye. A valuation spike post-authentication, coinciding with Lady Hale's initial donation. Cross-referencing with insurance documents, he noted her status as partial beneficiary, tied to her familial connection. Motives entwine like vines, he whispered. Hastings returned mid-afternoon, breathless from his reconnaissance. Poirot, you won't believe it. I tailed Thorne to the stacks. She was poring over another illuminated text, muttering about matching pigments. Seemed harmless, scholarly stuff. And the others? Fletcher slipped out to a nearby cafe, met a shady chap, handed over an envelope, looked furtive. Lady Hale visited Sir Archibald in his study. I overheard snippets through the door. Something about promised shares and if funds falter. She sounded insistent. Poirot's mustache twitched. Excellent, Hastings. The threads pull tighter. Emboldened, Poirot confronted Fletcher in the main reading room, where the young man was ostensibly reorganizing shelves. Monsieur Fletcher, a word. Your debts, they weigh heavily, non? And this envelope exchange. Payment or extortion? Fletcher's face drained of color, his hands dropping a volume with a thud. How did you? It's not what you think. The man was a creditor. I paid an installment. Blackwood knew of my troubles. He threatened to expose me unless I assisted in minor irregularities. Irregularities? Such as adjusting records, overlooking discrepancies in the codex's binding. He claimed it was for research, but I suspect he was involved in the forgeries himself. Poirot pressed. And the hidden drawer? What did it contain? A ledger of transactions, gone now. Blackwood must have taken it. As Fletcher scurried away, Inspector MacLeod arrived with forensic updates. The hair strand matches Dr. Thorne's color, but common enough. Footprints, a man's boot, size 10, fits Fletcher or Sir Archibald. And the note from Blackwood's room. Ink analysis shows it's forged. The E, a poor mimicry. Poirot chuckled. Ah, the forger turns victim to forgery. Consider, Inspector, the ladder in the alcove, positioned for access to high shelves. Yet Blackwood was not tall. Someone else climbed, perhaps to retrieve or plant evidence. MacLeod rubbed his chin. Thorne's height suffices, but she's no climber. Hale's glove, scented with her perfume, found near the scene. Maid says she misplaced it days ago. Stolen, then, to implicate? The puzzle deepens. That evening, as the group dined in subdued silence, roast beef and Yorkshire pudding served with mechanical courtesy, Poirot observed anew. Lady Hale picked at her meal, her eyes occasionally meeting Sir Archibald's with unspoken urgency. Thorne engaged in terse discussion with the curator about preserving the codex, while Fletcher avoided all gaze, his appetite absent. Post-dinner, Poirot requested a private audience with Lady Hale in the salon. She arrived scented with lavender, her demeanor polished. "Monsieur Poirot, your persistence is admirable. What more can I offer?" "The truth, madame. Your argument with Sir Archibald about the Codex's disposition. You seek to claim it?" She hesitated, then sighed. "My funds are not infinite. I invested heavily here, expecting returns through exhibitions. If the library falters, the Codex could secure my position. But murder? I abhor violence. And Blackwood, he knew of this? He advised against it, called it imprudent. We clashed privately." Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. Alone with Hastings, he paced. "The margins, mon ami, they hold not just symbols, but codes. Deciphered, they list artifacts smuggled through forgeries. Blackwood discovered this, planning to expose the ring. Hastings whistled. So the killer silenced him, but who leads the ring? A question for the morrow, yet clues accumulate. The loose binding threads on the Codex rebound recently, concealing additions. A dropped handkerchief in Thorne's scent? No. Wait, earlier, a glove. As night fell, Poirot examined the Codex once more under lamplight. A sudden insight struck. The annotations formed a cipher, referencing page numbers that, when cross-referenced, spelled a name. "Ingenious," he murmured. "The gilded truth, indeed." Outside, fog rolled in from the Forth, blanketing the city in mystery. In his chamber, Poirot assembled mental fragments: Thorne's stolen leaf, Fletcher's payoffs, Hale's pressures, Archibald's threats. The storm of suspicion brewed, poised to break in revelation. Yet one detail nagged: the secret passage mentioned in passing. Poirot resolved to explore it at first light, suspecting it as the killer's ingress. The margins had yielded clues, but the library's hidden veins might reveal the heart of the deceit. As sleep claimed him, the detective dreamed of illuminated serpents, coiling toward an inevitable unveiling. Chapter 6. The Gathering Storm. The skies over Edinburgh had darkened ominously by late afternoon, heavy clouds gathering like conspirators above the jagged skyline. Hercule Poirot, having spent the hours since his archival revelations in quiet contemplation, now paced the length of Sir Archibald's study, his cane tapping a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant rumble of thunder. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered like autumn leaves, were aligning in his mind with the inexorable logic of a well-oiled mechanism. Yet he required one final confirmation, a test of the secret passage he had intuited from architectural plans glimpsed in the library's records. Enlisting Hastings as lookout, Poirot located the concealed panel in the residence's lower hall, a section of wainscoting that yielded to a hidden latch. The passage, narrow and dust-laden, wound through the walls, emerging behind a tapestry in the library's rare books alcove. "Voilà, mon ami," Poirot whispered, brushing cobwebs from his sleeves. The killer's unseen path, accessible to those who know the house's secrets, such as family or trusted intimates. Hastings shivered in the chill draft. Clever devil. No need for keys or forcing entry. Précisément. And observe, fresh footprints in the dust, a woman's shoe size, not Thorne's sturdy brogues, but perhaps a lady's elegant heel. With this discovery secured, Poirot dispatched notes via a servant, summoning all parties to assemble in the main reading room at 8 that evening. "The storm brews," he confided to Hastings. "We shall harness its drama to unmask the guilty." As twilight deepened, the group convened amid the gilded splendor of the room. Lightning flashed intermittently through the tall windows, illuminating the faces in stark relief. Dr. Thorne, seated rigidly with arms crossed. Mr. Fletcher, perched on a chair's edge, twisting his handkerchief. Lady Victoria Hale, reclining with feigned nonchalance on a chaise, her fan fluttering. Sir Archibald, standing by the hearth, his expression a mask of weary resolve. Inspector MacLeod arrived last, his sergeant in tow, nodding approval at Poirot's initiative. "If you've cracked it, man, let's hear it. The forensics confirm the passage's use, fibers matching Hale's gown." The wind howled outside, rattling the casements as rain began to lash the panes. Poirot positioned himself at the room's center, beneath the chandelier's crystal prisms, which cast dancing lights like fragmented clues. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice resonant yet measured, "we gather not for accusation, but for revelation. The death of Professor Blackwood was no impulsive act of passion, but a calculated weave in a tapestry of deceit that spans years." He paused, allowing thunder to underscore his words. "Let us review the motives, for in them lies the pattern. Dr. Thorne, your glory stolen by Blackwood's plagiarism, a wound that festers, driving you to expose forgeries at any cost. Mr. Fletcher, ensnared in debts, coerced into irregularities that compromised your integrity. Sir Archibald, burdened by anonymous threats that threatened your reputation and the library's solvency. And Lady Hale, your investments teetering, with the Codex as potential salvation through inheritance or sale." Gasps rippled through the assembly. Thorne's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting one of us?" Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, mademoiselle. The key, it is the Edinburgh Codex itself. Not the priceless artifact it appears, but a forgery, swapped for the original perhaps a decade ago, when Blackwood authenticated it. The margins, with their modern annotations, encode not ancient alchemies, but inventories of smuggled rare books, a fortune hidden in plain sight within this very library." Sir Archibald staggered back. "Impossible. I acquired it from a reputable source." "Ah, but the source was tainted. Blackwood, complicit at first, grew uneasy. He discovered the full extent of the fraud and planned to expose it, hence the midnight meeting note, forged to lure him under false pretenses." Fletcher interjected, his voice quavering. "But the torn leaf, the serpent from Thorne's bestiary?" "Planted, monsieur, to sow suspicion. Stolen from her room earlier, torn fresh to implicate her rivalry. The killer struck from behind, seizing the letter opener in a moment of opportunity, the wound precise to ensure silence." Lightning cracked, bathing the room in white light. Lady Hale's fan stilled. "And the locked room? The alibis?" Poirot smiled enigmatically. "The secret passage, madame, known to you through familial ties. It bypasses locks, allowing entry unseen. Your laudanum? Untouched, as the vial's seal betrayed. The glove, scented with your perfume, dropped not by accident, but reclaimed too late. Your headache? A convenient veil for solitude." Inspector MacLeod leaned forward. "Evidence, Poirot? Consider the footprints in the passage, matching your heel. The Codex's rebinding, traced to a workshop you patronize, and the threats to Sir Archibald, penned in your hand, disguised but revealed by ink analysis matching your correspondence." Thorne rose, her face alight with vindication. "But why? What drove her?" Poirot turned to Lady Hale, his gaze piercing. "The forgery ring, madam. You orchestrated it. Investments faltered after your husband's death. You turned to artifice, swapping originals for fakes, selling the genuine articles discreetly. Blackwood, once your ally, perhaps even your paramour, threatened betrayal when conscience stirred. He confronted you privately, but you followed via the passage, silencing him forever. Lady Hale's composure cracked, her face paling as thunder rolled. Lies. You have no proof. Ah, but the hidden drawer, emptied of the incriminating ledger. Fletcher, coerced by you with debt relief, retrieved it post-murder, but overlooked a scrap, a note in your script promising him freedom. Fletcher crumpled. She did, said it was the only way. Sir Archibald gasped. Victoria? My wife's kin? Betrayal in our midst? Poirot nodded gravely. The storm gathers force, but truth pierces the clouds. Your alibi crumbles under scrutiny, madame. The maid saw you slip out, not sleeping as claimed. Lady Hale stood abruptly, her eyes wild in the flickering light. Enough! Reginald would have ruined me, exposed the swaps, seized the profits. It was impulse, a desperate act. MacLeod signaled his sergeant. Lady Victoria Hale, you're under arrest for the murder of Professor Reginald Blackwood. As she was led away, protesting faintly, the room fell silent, save for the rain's tattoo. Sir Archibald sank into a chair, head in hands. The library, tainted. What now? Poirot placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Restore the originals, mon ami. The forgeries unmasked. Value returns in authenticity. Hastings, ever loyal, beamed. Brilliant as always, Poirot. The little gray cells never fail. Outside, the storm peaked, lightning etching the night. But within, clarity dawned. The gathering tempest had broken, washing away the shadows of deceit, leaving only the promise of justice in its wake. Yet Poirot, gazing at the rain-streaked windows, knew that human nature's complexities would summon him anew, for mysteries, like storms, were eternal. Chapter 7. The Unveiling. The tempest that had raged through the night left Edinburgh glistening under a tentative morning sun, the cobbles of the old town slick with rain, and the air crisped with the promise of renewal. In the Gilded Library's main reading room, where the events of the previous evening had culminated in Lady Victoria Hale's dramatic confession, a subdued gathering reconvened at Inspector MacLeod's behest. The chandeliers, now bathed in natural light, cast a softer glow over the assembled faces, but the atmosphere remained charged, like the calm after a gale. Hercule Poirot stood at the hearth, his posture impeccable, his moustache a testament to unflappable composure. Captain Hastings flanked him, notebook in hand, while Sir Archibald Drummond sat heavily in an armchair, his white beard disheveled from a sleepless vigil. Dr. Eliza Thorne paced near the windows, her sharp features etched with a mix of relief and lingering suspicion. Mr. Ian Fletcher hovered by the door, his spectacles polished, but his expression haunted. Lady Hale, under guard in an adjoining chamber, awaited formal charges, her elegance now a fragile veneer over defeat. Inspector MacLeod cleared his throat, his brogue cutting through the hush. "We've a few loose ends to tie, folks. Madame Hale's admission was forthcoming, but details must be corroborated. Poirot, you've the floor. Elucidate for the record." Poirot inclined his head, his green eyes sweeping the room. "Merci, Inspector. The unveiling of truth is not merely accusation, but illumination, a clearing of the mists that obscured the path. Let us reconstruct, step by step, the tragedy that befell Professor Blackwood." He began with the Codex, that luminous centerpiece of deception. This manuscript, purportedly a 12th century gospel, was in fact a masterful forgery. The original, spirited away years ago, resided in the hands of collectors who paid handsomely for authenticity. The substitute, rebound with modern threads and annotated in coded ink, served as a ledger for the illicit trade. Symbols in the margins, mercury for swift exchanges, serpents for treacherous dealings, mapped a network of smuggled rarities. Sir Archibald interjected, his voice hoarse. "But how? I trusted Blackwood's authentication." "Ah, mon ami, trust is the forger's greatest ally. Blackwood, initially complicit for personal gain, later sought redemption. His investigations uncovered the full scope, prompting him to summon a confrontation. The forged note, signed E to mimic Dr. Thorne, lured him to the alcove at midnight. He believed it a scholarly truce." Thorne halted her pacing. "My bestiary leaf, torn to frame me. Vile." Poirot nodded. "Indeed." The killer, anticipating exposure, entered via the secret passage, a relic of the building's history, known to Lady Hale through her cousin's confidences. She observed Blackwood poring over the codex, his back turned in concentration. In a flash of desperation, she seized the jeweled opener, his own, engraved as a cruel irony, and struck. The wound, precise to the heart, ensured silence. She planted the serpent fragment, emptied the hidden drawer of the true ledger, and retreated unseen. Fletcher shifted uncomfortably. And my role? She ensnared me with promises to clear my debts. I adjusted records, overlooked anomalies. But murder? I knew nothing until after. Précisément, monsieur. Your fear made you pliable, but not culpable in the act. The glove, scented with her, lavender, dropped in haste. The untouched laudanum vial, betraying her feigned slumber. The footprints in the passage dust, all pointed inexorably to her. MacLeod consulted his notes. The threats to Sir Archibald, her handiwork, to pressure a sale of the codex and liquidate assets. Forensics matched the ink to her personal stationery. Poirot continued, his tone measured. Motives intertwined. Financial ruin loomed for Lady Hale, her widow's fortune eroded by poor investments. The forgery ring supplemented it, with Blackwood as partner turned liability. Their past liaison, hinted in private letters we uncovered, added betrayal's sting. He threatened not just exposure, but abandonment. A murmur arose. Thorne's eyes widened. A lover? That explains his defensiveness toward my accusations. He protected her schemes. Lady Hale was brought in then, her wrists discreetly cuffed, her gown from the previous night now rumpled. She met Poirot's gaze defiantly. "You paint me a monster, monsieur, but Reginald's greed matched mine. He demanded a larger share, threatened to confess all unless I yielded. In that moment, with the storm raging outside, impulse overtook reason. Poirot regarded her with a trace of pity. Impulse, madame? Or calculation? You wiped the weapon, planted clues to scatter suspicion, Thorne's rivalry, Fletcher's debts, even Sir Archibald's insurance woes. But the little gray cells discern patterns where chaos feigns." MacLeod stepped forward. "Confession noted. You'll be charged with murder, forgery, and theft. The codex replica will be impounded, efforts to recover the original underway." As she was escorted out, Sir Archibald rose unsteadily. "The library, its reputation sullied. How to proceed?" Poirot placed a hand on his arm. "With truth as foundation, mon ami. Expose the forgeries publicly. It shall draw scholars anew, honoring genuine knowledge. The gilded halls will shine brighter for the shadows banished." Thorne approached. Her demeanor softened. "Monsieur Poirot, your insight, remarkable. I misjudged Blackwood's depths, but perhaps we all harbor shadows." Fletcher nodded meekly. "I'll assist in the audits, Sir Archibald. to make amends. As the group dispersed, Hastings turned to Poirot with admiration. "Another triumph, old chap. The way you pieced it, brilliant." Poirot smiled modestly. "The human mind, Hastings, leaves trails as clear as footprints in snow. One must only look with order and method." They stepped into the courtyard, where the sun now broke fully through the clouds, warming the ancient stones. Edinburgh stirred around them, the distant bagpipes skirling, vendors calling from the mile. Poirot adjusted his hat against the breeze. "A train awaits, mon ami. London calls with its own enigmas." Hastings chuckled. "And a decent cup of tea, I hope. This northern chill seeps into the bones." As they departed, the Gilded Library stood sentinel, its facade unmarred by the night's revelations. Within its walls, pages turned anew, free from the stain of deceit. Hercule Poirot, ever the guardian of justice, boarded the southbound express, his thoughts already drifting to the next puzzle that fate might unfold. For in the world of men, mysteries endured, but so too did the unyielding pursuit of truth.